Hello. This is actually, what you're seeing now is an add-on which has been made 3 days after my original Nova Kakhovka Dam video. You can see it's been a while because I can say Nova Kakhovka Dam now without stumbling. I've had plenty of practice. I'm adding this because of, well, news events move quickly, and I wanted to add a couple of things to the original video. So there's been lots of speculation, hasn't there, about how the dam met its end, because, of course, that would tell us, well, it would go a long way to telling us who did it. My money's on the Russians, of course. I know some of you disagree with that. According to my reasoning, the advantage and the brutality is still weighted on the Russian side, however. And that's my position. I'm not going to try and pretend I'm giving you a completely unbiased view. But I'm not going to dismiss cogent arguments in favour of the Ukraine theory either. I would dismiss things people who say, oh yes, it was a plot between the Ukrainians and the Americans, and leave it at that. That is not an argument. That's an assertion. All right, but there have been a couple of people who've made very good arguments, and yeah, I've taken them on board. I don't accept most of what they're saying, but you know, that's my opinion. The upcoming video is about how I think it was done. I was going to give another video afterwards about why it was done. I'm not going to do that now because, well, I'm not going to put it out. I did make it, but there's no point. I've covered many of the points in these videos. Okay, now this morning I saw that the Telegraph was reporting an intercepted phone conversation between Russian soldiers, which, if it's genuine, would confirm the idea that there were mines in the turbine room, that the Russians knew about them and could have done something about them. Apparently, according to the Telegraph, the conversation says that they were let off accidentally. Now, the way the Russians have been conducting this clown show, I can find that as believable as any other theory. But I can't vouch for the veracity of the report. The Telegraph says that satellite surveillance on the dam has recorded a heat signature that happened just before the dam gave way. Well, again, yeah, could be mines. Certainly not missiles, though. They would have seen that in the satellite surveillance. But anyway, it could be mines. But it also, I think, could have been electrical stuff shorting out when water had broken through the back part of the dam and was invading the turbine room. Yeah, again, you dam engineers, you can tell me whether that's right or wrong. I'm still leaning to the idea, though, which is a conclusion I reached, and I'm giving the game away now. Spoiler alert, I'm giving the game away. The structure gave way. It didn't explode. That's how the conclusion I reached. And the reason was I've seen a policy of benign neglect on that dam over months, and that could have involved poor maintenance. After all, the Russians have something of a talent in that area. But they did seem to be backing that up with a deliberate policy. For instance, they kept the dam as full as it could be, which increased the pressure on the structure enormously. And the Ukrainians were warning about this months ago. It seems like, I mean, you know, just a speculation, but if they filled the dam and then let the structure collapse, then they could be able to destroy large parts of Ukraine. Remember what I said in the large video about just mayhem. Can't win, so just create as much mayhem as you can. But they could do that without being charged with the war crime of destroying the dam, which is actually now a war crime. I wasn't aware of that either. Also, before I start the older video, I just want to bring a couple more points to your attention to do with the pollution aspects. The first is, several comments quite reasonably said hydroelectric facilities don't use petroleum. That's the whole point of them. So the oil contamination of the floods couldn't be happening. I assumed that, well, first of all, the plant would have had petroleum-driven backup systems. That was my guess, which might have contained enormous reserve tanks. It was a huge dam. There was plenty of room for such things. And of course, there would definitely be a lot of lubricating oil, again, possibly in very, very large tanks to mean that you don't have to keep bringing lubricating oil in, since falling short of that is definitely a no-no. But one of the comments under my video had it that there's a downstream oil refinery there in the path of the floods. So, well, I think we have the answer there, if he's right. Oil contamination, by the way, makes soil unsuitable for farm use for a very long time. Forever, I think, without intervention. And right now there's a whole lot of Just Stop Oil people stopping traffic in London. Why aren't they all out in Ukraine trying to help reduce the contamination and the ecological damage? I wonder why. Well, that's because they're not really that bothered about the ecology, really. They have a political agenda. Oh, but that's for another video. Now, as for the mines, which were all over the south bank of the Dnipro at the point where the flooding is now most evident, it's been pointed out to me that they could be swept out from the ground under the pressure of the water, and then being swept off downriver to end up on riverbanks, or if they float, I don't know how buoyant those things are, but they could end up on beaches all the way around the Black Sea. Remember, you know, messages in bottles can travel thousands of miles. The dreadful consequences of that I shall leave to your imaginations. Okay, there is absolutely, whatever else you might think of my opinions, the fact is this is an ecological disaster of proportions which we can only begin to imagine right now. Whatever you think of, it's worse. It's much, much worse. And it will be worse for generations now, I'm sure of it. It's a horrific thing, and it wouldn't have happened if the Russians hadn't tried invading Ukraine. I mean, that's where it goes back to, all the way. Right, well, anyway, that's my position on the whole issue. If you don't like that, then you don't need to watch the rest of the video. Hello. First of all, I want to warn you that any extraneous noises are coming from my dog, who appears to be enjoying licking himself at the moment. Right, this is the third video in a series I'm making about the Nova Kakhovka Dam. As I said in the previous ones, this is the result of starting to make a video and then realising it was going to be too long, so I decided to divide it up into, well, 4 sections. First of all was dealing with the ecological disaster, then who done it, now we're going to how done it. And I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I'm also on Twitter and Gab. That's where I'll let you know when I upload a new video. All the links are in the description, as will be the links to the other videos. And there are also links for donations if you want, but the best you can do actually is to click that like button, to share and to subscribe, and to check if you're on YouTube that you still are subscribed. All right, well, I suppose, like me, you'll have noticed originally the lack of fuss from the Russian sources when this happened. It was all very quiet. It happened just before 3 in the morning, 2:50, I believe, and there should have been a huge shouting from the Russian press by the morning editions or on the news. But even the mayor of Kherson, said, first thing that morning that the very idea of an attack on the dam was the imaginings of a lunatic. Then, a couple of hours later, that comment was taken down to be replaced by, well, like so many other Russian missiles, strident blame directed towards Ukraine for the attack they were supposed to have perpetrated. Facts are a bit thin on the ground so far, but I can see only two reasons for the mayor to deny anything happened. The first is because he was trying to pretend that nothing had happened. Of course, even in the Russian upside-down universe, that wouldn't make any sense. So the only remaining reason that I can think of, if you have any other ideas, feel free, I think of, it is that the mayor was completely unaware that anything had happened. And the only way that could happen was that there were no loud bangs or untoward noises going on at 3 in the morning, or at least loud enough to wake him up. So, seeing as a few people have hilariously quoted the British dam busters' famous raid on the Ruhr Valley dams, reference to those in the Who Done It video you'll have to go to, we'll start with the idea that the Ukrainians flew aircraft over there. Well, that's a non-starter. Had it been planes, by now there would have been some videos of swooping aircraft taken by the locals and posted on the web. This is not an isolated area. There are very large built-up areas all round. Here are some pictures. This is the general area here. There's the dam, of course. And here's a view from, well, across the wreck dam. You can see there are people, you know, there are settlements of people around there. This is the North Bank. That's the Ukrainian area. Look at this is the close-up of the South Bank. Look at all these houses. So, there are lots of people around there. Somebody would have taken a video of that. Now, so how about missiles? Because HIMARS, for instance, well, they do go very fast. Well, first of all, I've read some stuff about the HIMARS, and apparently a lot of people think that HIMARS couldn't actually make holes in that sort of a dam. But I'm not qualified to say that. I mean, I'm qualified to say it. I'm not qualified to tell you if that means anything of any account. But I want to refer to these photos again. You see, because here, look, well, this one in particular. You can see how close the houses are. And well, HIMARS are really noisy. I'm going to show you a video of one being launched and flying off. Okay. Admittedly, the first noise is the launch. Oh, just a minute, I want to get this centered. That's better. The first noise is the launch, which the locals wouldn't have heard because the launch would have gone on miles away. But after that, there is a very distinct noise as it's travelling. HIMARS do go very fast. So possibly there would have been no time for a local to react, but there would have certainly been time for a local to hear it and wake up. And almost certainly when the missiles struck the dam, that would have made a hell of a bang. That's almost poetry, isn't it? And again, to date, we're not seeing any pictures of bewildered locals sticking their mobile phones out of windows trying to see what's going on. It also appears that the breach was in that specific part of the dam, just the very specific part of the dam where the turbines were positioned. In other words, the weakest part of the structure. So, by this reasoning, and of course I could be wrong, it seems to me that the most likely explanation would have to be either that the dam failed at its point of weakness, that is, the big hole where the turbines were housed, or that section contained explosives that either deliberately or by accident went off. Now, the Ukrainians have for months been warning that the dam was mined, by the way. So that's a possibility, although we can also dismiss that as war propaganda. Just as we can accept the idea that it's possible that somehow the Ukrainians got into there and put mines there. But, well, working on likelihood, it's far more likely that if there were mines, the Russians had laid them. After all, they've had complete control of the entire dam and the surrounding area for, well, months. And if the Ukrainians had put something there, they'd have found it. But there is another possibility, and I'm going to show you another photo here. It's quite possible that the Russians have been pursuing a policy of what looks like deliberate pressure on the dam. The Ukrainians have been warning for months that the reservoir has been overfull and kept overfull. And this is certainly provable. There are satellite photos that confirm it, so we can't dismiss that as Ukrainian propaganda. It's been full right to the top, when the normal procedure at that sort of water level would have been to have let some of the water out. So it's entirely possible that the structure has been under severe unrelieved stress for many months now. And if, in addition, it was not being maintained properly, well, anyone who's tried to fill a balloon with too much water could predict the outcome on that. Here you see some photos. On 1st of June, that looks to me not like sluice water, but damage leaking. And here there's more damage, and there's some damage to the road there. And then this bit just gave way. It's quite possible that by accident or design, the weakest point there, the point where the turbines were, simply gave way. And as I said, in this case, the weakest point would be the place where the hydroelectric machinery was making a big hole in the wall. So it's just possible the breach could have happened all on its own. It might not even have been intentional, although it could just as easily have been intentional as well. Well, I find it a bit difficult to believe it happened all on its own without them knowing about it, simply because the engineers must have known, the people in charge must have known the consequences of leaving a dam so full for so long. And if they didn't know, then the Ukrainians were warning them of this all the time. And that, combined with the Russians' record on machine maintenance generally, could have made a lethal combination. So whether or it was mined or it just fell apart like most other Russian machinery and governments and all the rest of it, whether the deterioration was intentionally encouraged or happened through incompetence, let's face it, this is all in the hands of the Russians. They were the ones who caused this situation. They were the ones who knew about this situation. And this situation is definitely down to them. All right. Well, till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Granbo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.